Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of IET with Mike C. Man, I am so glad to be with you here today. And let me tell you something I know about today. There's only one reason why I'm here today, and that is the grace of God. Amen. Man, what a beautiful day it is. Got some stuff for you today. It's not one of those moments, but maybe it is for some because it's just stuff I find it hard to believe that a lot of this stuff still continues in this United States of America today. I just find it hard to believe. And I know that a lot of you don't know about it because it's stuff that's not reported on the television and you just don't know it exists, but it does. And we're going to share some of it with you today. Have you heard about Senator Mike Bruan from the state of Indiana? It appears that Senator Bruan is okay with states, not federal courts, but states making decisions on things like abortion, interracial marriage, gay marriage. He would rather those things be made by states rather than by the courts. I find that you just don't understand. If he doesn't get it, can you imagine the state of Alabama being in charge of whether or not its citizens are allowed to take part in interracial marriages? Come on, dude. Where you at? Look, I tell you what, just watch this and see for yourself what Senator Bruan has to say.
Hey, Senator. You spoke about judicial activism. If the Supreme Court later this year strikes down the right to abortion, would you consider that to be judicial activism, legislating from the bench?
I consider it to have been judicial activism when it occurred back almost 50 years ago. So I think this would be bringing it back to a neutral point to where that issue should have never been federalized, way out of sync, I think, with the contour of America then. And this basically puts it back to a point where, like most of these issues, where one side of the aisle wants to homogenize it federally, is not the right way to do it. This should be something where the expression of individual states are able to weigh in on these issues through their own legislation, through their own court systems. Quit trying to put the federal government in charge of not only things like we did navigating through COVID recently, where I think that was misguided, but in general. So no, I think this takes it back to a point where it should have never gotten beyond in the first place.
That same basis to something like Loving versus Virginia, the Supreme Court case that legalized interracial marriage.
So when it comes to issues, you can't have it both ways. When you want that diversity to shine within our federal system, there are going to be rules and proceedings. They're going to be out of sync with maybe what other states would do. It's the beauty of the system, and that's where the differences among points of view in our 50 states ought to express themselves. And I'm not saying that rule would apply in general, depending on the topic, but it should mostly be in general, because it's hard to have it on issues that you just are interested in when you deny it for others with a different point of view.
So you would be okay with the Supreme Court leaving the question of interracial marriage to the states?
Yes, I think that that's something that if you're not wanting the Supreme Court to weigh in on issues like that, you're not going to be able to have your cake and eat it too. I think that's hypocritical.
What about Griswold versus Connecticut?
Well, you can list a whole host of issues. When it comes down to whatever they are, I'm going to say that they're not going to all make you happy within a given state, but that we're better off having states manifest their points of view rather than homogenizing it across the country as Roe versus Wade did. Thanks.
Did you hear that? He would rather see decisions like interracial marriage, gay marriage, and abortion be decided by states rather than by the federal courts. Again, can you imagine states like Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana deciding whether or not it was okay for their citizens to get married if they were of different races, if they were gay? Look, let me ask you this. If you continue to do that, if you do that, you allow the states to make decisions. These are the same types of ideas that got us into a civil war once already, because the states could not agree. So that's what would happen. You're looking really at a civil war taking place. Judicial activism, be careful when any politician starts talking about judicial activism. They both use it to try and politicize the court. Not so much, the Democrats not as much as the Republicans. The Republicans, man, are really, really tight on that. They come together to use judicial activism to try and politicize the courts. When they actually want to politicize the courts, they actually try and make the court members themselves look as though they're politicizing things. That's what he was saying about Roe versus Wade. He said that it was politicized, it was political activism, basically what he was saying. And what they're saying with political activism, basically they're saying that the court really is overstepping its bounds and functioning more like a political entity than like a judicial entity. If the court rules on something that they disagree with, they claim judicial activism. It doesn't make any sense. Let me show you something else. Let me give you a little more information about judicial activism. Watch this.
Judicial activism doesn't mean the same thing to everyone. I think a common observation people make about the term judicial activism is it's something you say about a decision you don't like. But part of my work has been to excavate the political history of judicial activism. My recent work has focused on both contemporary dynamics of political activism and historical analogs. And in 2015, the United States Supreme Court decided the Obergefell case, where they recognized a fundamental right of same-sex couples to marry. And in the dissent to that case, the Chief Justice criticized the majority for judicial activism. And he not only did that at some length, but he compared the Obergefell decision on marriage to a very famous decision at the early part of the 20th century called the Lochner versus New York. And that inspired me to look at how the political attacks on the courts as activists were the same or different in the two different eras, and I came up with some interesting findings. Number one, the political parties today are much more polarized than they were at the turn of the century and the time of Lochner. And by that I mean they're more internally, ideologically coherent, and they're further away from each other in terms of their attitudes. At the time of Lochner, the Republican Party was in fact quite divided, and the principal source of attacks on the courts came not from Republicans or Democrats, but from a third party, the Progressive Party. Whereas today, attacks on the courts as activists has been a mainstay of Republican Party politics since the time of Richard Nixon. And the Republican Party is very unified in its attacks on courts as activists. A second difference relates to the stridency of the attacks. The attacks, at least to the extent that Republicans and Democrats in the earlier period criticized the courts, much more muted, much more respectful, much more tentative. These days, particularly the Republican Party, since the time of Nixon, has included very strident, increasingly bitter attacks in its presidential platforms on the courts as activists. Now, the Democrats aren't always happy with the courts either, but they tend to attack individual decisions in strong terms, not institutionally claim that the court has exceeded its proper role. And then just a third difference between them relates to the expanded scope of the conflict over judicial activism. It was a relatively limited conflict back in the early time, among other reasons because Senate confirmation hearings were nothing like the show they are today. Supreme Court nominations are a major extravaganza and an opportunity for the parties to battle each other about the role of the court. In contemporary times, occasionally you'll have Democratic senators in confirmation hearings talk about judicial activism, and there they mean they're unhappy with Supreme Court decisions striking down part of the Voting Rights Act, striking down campaign finance regulation. But by and large, it's been a staple of Republican Party attacks, starting at the time of the Warren Court, escalating in rhetoric. And I think when you step back and look at it, what all of this means is that the court has become much more politicized and much more a part of political debates than it once was. It's a regular issue with constituencies and interest groups on both sides of it, and I think that affects the context in which the Supreme Court works.
So as you heard, not only do both parties use political activism when they are about to try to politicize the courts, but the court actually does it itself. You heard that. So look, this thing, it just, who does it affect the most? Let me ask you a question. Why is it that the party that complains more about their rights being taken away, the party that is supposed to be for personal rights, is the first party to take away rights? What do I mean by that? The right of a woman to choose. Look, I'm a minister. I'm a minister of the gospel. And just through my faith alone, I don't believe in abortion. At the same time, I have to say, I don't believe in taking away someone's right of choice. I don't think it's right for old white men who have never probably lived in diversity to choose that a woman cannot have an abortion when she has been raped. Let me ask you a question. Who's going to take care of those unwanted children? Is it the old white men that are making these choices for us? They're not going to do anything for them. They're not doing anything for them now. It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Look, let me share with you a little bit more about Senator Mike Bruan. Bruan opposes the Affordable Care Act, abortion, and the pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants. He's a self-described conservative who has pressured the Republican Party to require global climate change more seriously. But he also supported U.S. withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accord. Is that, what side you're on there, man? During Trump's presidency, he supported Trump's trade and tariff policies that, after having previously been a trade advocate, Bruan voted to acquit Trump within the impeachment trial associated with the Trump-Ukraine scandal. After Joe Biden won the 2020 election and Trump refused to concede while making false claims of fraud, Bruan defended Trump, his plan to overturn the election results. Something else about Mike Bruan. How can someone who is not part of the average class represent the average class? Mike Bruan is worth something around $65 million. He has no idea of the hardships that you face day to day. And we can say that about a lot of our politicians. A lot of them are millionaires, if not most are millionaires. They don't understand. They don't have a clue what you need and why you need it. And I just don't trust them. If they have politician after or before their name, I don't trust them. Whether they're Democrat or Republican, I don't trust them. What we have to start doing is we have to start voting for those of you that aren't voting, and we have to start doing a little bit more research about these issues. Again, you really need to understand what abortion is about, because I'm telling you, if they overturn Roe versus Wade, that's just going to be the beginning. If they allow states to decide about issues like interracial marriage, did you know that the state of Alabama, the statute for interracial marriage did not come off of the books in the state of Alabama until the year 2000? Until the year 2000. So you could have still been arrested for interracial marriage in the state of Alabama in 2019. Come on, folks. This stuff doesn't make any sense. And we have to start standing for right. Look, I've said this before. I believe that most people in America, most people are fair-minded, good-hearted people. What we have to do is we have to stop allowing the 1% to rule the 99%. We have to stop allowing the 1% to make decisions that affect your life, your everyday life. So I don't know what you're going to do, but I know this. I'm going to vote. We also have to pay attention. What's going on over at Tesla? I was looking at getting a Tesla. But now, no way. No way. They have had lawsuit after lawsuit going on over there, racial discrimination. It's just, it's sickening what's going on at Tesla. So I'm not going to get a Tesla. Actually, there's a car called Apter. Take a look at the Apter. It's a solar car that they say actually gets like 1,000 miles to the charge. That's what I'm looking at. But I don't know what's going on at Tesla. I bank at Wells Fargo. Not much longer. Wells Fargo has some serious issues going on over there. On February 23rd, a lawsuit the California city of Sacramento filed against the bank, Bank of America, in February 2018 over alleged discriminatory lending ended without a compensation to the city or people who purchased homes with expensive and risky loans. The city sued the bank in the U.S. District Court in Sacramento, alleging that Wells Fargo had steered Black and Latino home buyers toward higher cost or higher risk loans, and that the homeowners subsequently lost their houses to foreclosure at a higher risk. Additionally, Sacramento alleged the bank refused to extend credit to non-white borrowers looking to refinance previously issued unnecessarily expensive. Now, that was on the West Coast. That was in Sacramento, California. It doesn't stop there. Recently, the city of New York suspended new memberships for Wells Fargo. Check this one out as well. Wells Fargo responded with, that's not the one I was looking at. Here we go. In light of this persisting track record of discrimination, New York City will not be opening any new dispository accounts with Wells Fargo Bank, N.A. As we continue to investigate these troubling findings, the two officials wrote. The proof of the problem at Wells Fargo is in the numbers. Wells Fargo approved just 47% of Black homeowners who completed applications to refinance mortgages in 2020, compared with 72% of white applicants, according to the Bloomberg report. Although its approval rate for Black applicants increased to 58% in 2021, it was still behind white home ownership, was now up to 79%, of whom had their bid to refinance approved. Wells Fargo was hit with a class action race discrimination class action on February 17th in California's Northern District Court. look, for those of you that thought that racism doesn't exist anymore, this is only a part of what they call redlining. Redlining is where banks actually mark out an area of town that is predominantly Black and Latino, and they redline it. They write it in red. And if you are looking to purchase a home in those areas, your loan is going to be at a higher rate, and your ability to get a loan is going to be at a lesser rate. So, systemic racism, for those who have been fighting and saying it doesn't exist, just like what they're doing now in Texas and Florida, where they are forbidding history from being taught, the history basically of slavery. They want to forbid. They say it's almost like it didn't happen. It doesn't make any sense. I'm not look. Bottom line is we have midterm elections coming up soon. And if we do not vote, if the Republicans get a hold of the House and the Senate, Roe versus Wade, I'm sorry to tell you, it's just going to be the tip of the iceberg. There are so many. Look at what they're doing in the state of Texas. They're trying to change the history books. They're trying to almost act like slavery never happened. They do not want the full story of slavery to be taught in our schools. There's a bill in Texas. It's called SB 3, I believe it is. In this bill, what the Republican Party basically is doing is they're changing the history books. They're removing a lot of the facts of slavery. We have Rep. Ron Reynolds, Democrat, Missouri City. SB 3 is a blatant attempt to censor valuable education in our classrooms and whitewash our history. This is happening not only in Texas, this is happening in Florida. And it's going to continue to happen unless folks stand up and say, we're just not going to have it anymore. So, man, it never ends. It never ends. So we're going to end that in today's show with that. There is so far I can go with that, but I'm trying to keep these shows to 20 minutes, and we're actually over that right now. And all we want to do is present you with the information, and hopefully you will, take some time and research more about this stuff. But folks, you have to vote. You have to research. You have to make a difference. You can make a difference. Not just in making the world a better place, but making your community a better place. Starts with you. So look, I'll see you again soon. We always enjoy sitting here and make a comment, man. Let me hear what you think about some of this stuff. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do so. But until next time, you know what it is, man. Be easy now.